This is Dr. J. Franklin Schultz with the Police Perspective. Well, President Biden has issued dozens and dozens and dozens of clemency proclamations and some pardons as well, and is apparently poised as of today's date, 14th of December, to do some preemptive pardons. So let's talk about the difference between a pardon and a clemency. Pardon means you have just completely gotten rid of the conviction. If you've been pardoned, then it's as though nothing ever happened. A clemency is we're providing a little bit of respite from serving out a full sentence. So it may reduce your death sentence to a life sentence, or it may say, we'll let you out for time served, or something like that. So there's a vast difference between a pardon and clemency. So I agree with the necessity for executive power to give clemency and pardons. And the reason I say that is because sometimes the criminal justice system, with all of its protections from trial through appeal and all of the processes, sometimes there's a miscarriage of justice. Sometimes it proves there is proof of actual innocence. Now, one of the things that we need to be careful about when we hear that somebody has been freed because they were wrongfully convicted doesn't mean that they're not guilty. It just means that the system didn't work the way it should have. The witnesses were questionable. The evidence may have been tainted. There's some reason procedurally why a fair trial under the Constitution wasn't afforded. So we need to be careful when we say, oh, thousands of innocent people have been released because of wrongful convictions. Well, some have, for sure, but a wrongful conviction does not mean that the person was innocent necessarily. The other thing that we hear a lot about is a first-time nonviolent offender. Well, let me tell you, I've never seen anybody that goes to prison except on a very serious charge, that's their first interaction with the criminal justice system. Criminals, people accused of crimes, are given lots of opportunities. Their charges are dismissed, or they're dropped, or they're reduced, or they're plea bargained. They're put on probation. Lots and lots of second, third, fifth, 10th chances in our criminal justice system. So for a prosecutor or a judge to finally get fed up and say, this guy's got a long rap sheet, or this gal, then let's make this one stick, and this person needs to go to jail. Now, that's not true about everybody that's in prison, but I would say it's true of the vast majority. So, and when we say nonviolent offenders, if your house has been burglarized, if your car's been vandalized, broken into, if you have been harassed and intimidated, if your business has been burnt down to the ground, guess what? That's a nonviolent offender. Now, does that mean that that person hasn't committed a violence against society? Well, I'll let you think about that for a little bit. The other thing that we often hear, and we've heard this for years, and it hasn't been true for years, is, oh, they went to prison for personal possession of marijuana. Nobody goes to prison for that, and nobody has been in prison for that since at least the 1980s or 1990s. So when you have drug offenders, they've either sold or they've been involved in conspiracies, or they have massive quantity of drugs in their possession. It's not just some guy that's smoking some weed, gets caught by the cop out by the lake with some of their teenage friends, and they go to prison. That just doesn't happen. Okay, so that's mythology that has been perpetrated on the public by what I call Big Mary. There are major commercial interests in the propagation of marijuana use in this country. Now, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about in terms of whether marijuana ought to be legal or not, decriminalized, reclassified on the federal system. That's a different topic. But nobody's in jail for recreational marijuana use. Nobody. So those are some things that concern me when I hear of hundreds of people being granted clemency Did we look at their file? Did we see what their propensities are? Did we see what their prison conduct was like? Did we see what their total background is? Now, do we have some inequities in the justice system? Certainly. Are those solved by saying 2,000 people got to get out of jail free card? I don't know. Again, you can have various opinions about the death penalty. I have some concerns about the death penalty, but it still exists on the federal level. And if somebody has been sentenced to death, it was not done lightly. There are two different phases. You have the jury that finds the person guilty, and then you have a separate process that the Supreme Court has required to determine whether the death penalty is appropriate or not. We have some heinous, violent, multiple victim, just atrocious crimes for which the ultimate penalty of death has been assessed by a jury and has been scrutinized. And so if we want to say we don't have a death penalty anymore, we're going to just de facto get rid of it, even though it might be on the books by governors not signing any death warrants or presidential pardons or clemency for people on death row. Again, that's a judgment that we need to make as a society. But just to say that there are people on death row that don't belong there, except in cases of actual innocence, I have some real concerns about that attitude. We got rid of the death penalty here in my home state, my current home state of Colorado. It was de facto gone because for the last couple of governorships, they just wouldn't sign a death warrant. They just wouldn't do it. And then we finally got rid of it. But let me tell you, there's some crimes where you've got to think, man, does this person really deserve to live while their victims are rotting in the grave? And so, again, that's a complicated issue. I can't resolve it. But these massive, broad brush clemency things concern me quite a bit, and we ought to scrutinize those. Those cases ought to be scrutinized very carefully. And I'm not saying that they're not looked at, because those clemency requests have been on the desk for a long time, and maybe they're all justified, but it will be interesting to see. It will be tragic to see what the outcome of releasing some of these offenders is on the public. So time will tell, but again, it ought to be examined very carefully. That's my thoughts. Dr. J. Franklin Schultz with the police perspective.